Okay. Don't hate me. It's just an opinion. And you're watching this to get someone else's opinion. Even if you don't agree with it, it's good to hear. Maybe, just maybe, you might learn something new from someone who has a different perspective. So let's just do this and rip the Band-Aid right off. Okay. Super Mario 3D World is overrated. I know, it's fine. Get it out.
Get Aiden die!
Oh, hey, that's harsh.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Okay, hear me out. I'm not saying it's a bad game. It's good. It's really good. And that's just fine for something to simply live in the really good space. It doesn't have to be great, amazing, or a masterpiece to be perfectly worthwhile. Good things are good, and that is fine. So let's talk about this. Go back with me all the way to the year 2013. Hey, that's the year I got married. This year, everyone was doing the Harlem Shake, and Miley Cyrus was licking sledgehammers naked.
Breaking news this evening is the identity of the man who sent the Obama administration into defend and explain mode this week.
When you are subverting the power of government, that's a fundamentally dangerous thing to democracy.
Do you ever take banned substances to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
The guy was a sociopath on a bicycle, all right? We got off easy. Yeah.
Here are the basics of how to use Glass.
Search avoid being bullied for wearing Google Glass.
I'm an American citizen.
And by the end of 2013, the Wii U had been on the market for a full year and was now going to be competing not just against the PS3 and Xbox 360, but brand spanking new consoles from Sony and Microsoft. HD wasn't just their endgame. They were looking to go full 4K, y'all. These new bad boys were going to definitely outgun the Wii U. Nintendo was hopefully going to prove why their gimmicky console was worthy enough to stand toe-to-toe with the big guys, like the GameCube was back in the day, and even the Wii to an extent. Unfortunately, 2013 wasn't going to be the year they showed why the gamepad was the next great thing, like motion controls. They would actually never prove it with the Wii U, sadly. Fresh off Super Mario Galaxy, the team turned their sights to the 3DS. Koichi Hayashida would direct the project. Hayashida prided himself on being a kind of video game archaeologist. He grew up playing the original Mario games on the Famicom and took a lot of time to study their design. Through observation, he studied how Miyamoto crafted games. From there, he was able to reverse engineer Miyamoto's game design process. For 3D Land, Hayashida wanted to reset the 3D Mario games by bringing more elements and design philosophies from the old 2D iterations. Part of the reason for wanting to lean into the old school Mario design was because this Mario game was going to be for a handheld system. Hayashida hadn't developed for Nintendo's handhelds before. He was strictly on the home console Mario design team. And there are two separate play styles typically for handheld games and home console games. Home console games you sat down to play for an extended period. Handheld games were shorter bursts of playtime. Think of meals versus snacks. The 2D Mario design philosophy leaned better to that snack-like content. The 3D games focus on exploring courses and finding the star, which could be pretty well hidden. The 2D games had an obvious goal that was quick to get to. But to just create a simple 2D Mario game wasn't gonna cut it. We had just gotten two of those, one on the DS and one on the Wii. Two more were on the way for the 3DS and the Wii U. Instead, the design team took the design philosophy of the 2D games and blended it with elements and ideas from the 3D games. What you got was a game jam-packed with bite-sized creative courses with a clear goal to reach, combined with 3D Mario's movesets and obstacle ideas. Star medals were added in from the new Super Mario Bros. Games as well. They added these to give the exploration factor that 3D Mario titles focused on into the 2D-inspired design philosophy. Take this mixture of design philosophies and add in creativity seen from the Super Mario Galaxy level mechanic ideas.
Maybe I had a stew going.
I think I'd like my money back.
Super Mario 3D Land was a hit. It was both nostalgic and new, perfect for a handheld 3D Mario title. While it really isn't talked about today, it did really well on the 3DS. The Wii U launched in 2012 with New Super Mario Bros. U, the first Nintendo console in almost 20 years to launch with a Mario game again. And like I mentioned in my last video, it's not a bad game. As a matter of fact, I'd argue it's the pinnacle of the new Super Mario Bros. Franchise, the best of the bunch. But we're used to getting a new Mario experience that would prove the validity of the new console. Not an iterative release to a sub-franchise that had overstayed its welcome and overplayed its hand. On the surface, launching with New Super Mario Bros. Seemed like a really good idea. The franchise was selling really, really well. New Super Mario Bros. 2 on the 3DS even outsold 3D Land in 2012. But New Super Mario Bros. 2 did launch just 4 months before the Wii U launched with New Super Mario Bros. U. In addition to just another new Super Mario Bros. Game as a launch title, was also a confusing marketing message surrounding the Wii U. Mainstream consumers were confused about the console. They didn't know it was a brand spanking new one and not just a tablet added onto the Wii. They were off to a very rocky start. The Wii U desperately needed something to validate its existence. While it had a strong launch lineup of third-party games, most were ports from the 360 and PS3. The only game that really utilized the gamepad in an incredible and novel way was Nintendo Land. While extremely fun and quite brilliant, I must say, it didn't catch on like Wii Sports did with the Wii. In addition to a lackluster launch of content was a large drought of games right at the Wii U's launch window. Nintendo published quite a few games, but they only developed 3 of the launch games, and their next Wii U game that was Nintendo developed wouldn't come out for months. They really had to rely on third-party support that wasn't there. Game & Wario and New Super Luigi U, which was DLC to New Super Mario U, both came out in June, and weren't necessarily what players were looking for. Their next big title wouldn't come out till August of 2013. That's 9 months after the Wii U's launch. Even then, it was Pikmin 3. Not a bad game, but it's a pretty niche product. Not the wholesale appeal that the Wii U desperately needed. Like the GameCube a decade earlier, Nintendo found themselves really needing something to push Wii U sales. Mario generally was that something that could do that on a large scale. But most consumers were looking for a return to the traditional 3D Mario games, something that would be big, sprawling, and most importantly, innovative. But Nintendo also needed a game that would have widespread appeal and hopefully push sales like the new Super Mario Bros. Franchise used to do. The summer of 2013, Nintendo announced the next Mario game, Super Mario 3D World, which is going to be in the vein of Super Mario 3D Land from the 3DS. And while people really liked 3D Land, most responses to 3D World were,
"But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?"
The reception wasn't what Nintendo wanted. For that matter, the game wasn't what we wanted either. It looked like more of what was in 3D Land and more of what the new Super Mario Bros. Games did, just with a Z-axis added. It's gonna be another linear Mario game, pretty to look at, but could ultimately be forgettable. Thankfully, that's not what 3D World would be. The game would be brimming with so many ideas, so much creativity, and so much life. So much pomp and circumstance. It would blow away a lot of Mario fans. Reservations were thankfully proven to be wrong. They threw everything they had at this game, and then some. The design team had a philosophy. It was, put it in. Platforms that changed on your jump? Put it in. Platforms that change to the beat of the music? Put it in. A circus level with switches to get to the next section? Put it in. Jet skiing on a dinosaur? Put it in. Rotating platforms? Put it in. Flamingos? Put it in. A Super Mario Kart themed course? Put it in. Captain Toad minigames? Put it in. Exploding soccer balls? Put it in. And one of the power-ups wasn't even supposed to be in the game. The double cherry started as a bug. During development, something happened that duplicated Mario, and the designer was controlling two separate Marios simultaneously. The dev team loved it, so instead of fixing the bug out of the game, they incorporated it right into the gameplay. The ideas and scope of the project grew and grew and grew and grew. No idea seemed to be too ridiculous or far-fetched to figure out how to implement it, and implement it well. Each level was wonderfully crafted with unique and fun mechanics. Ideas were rarely replicated, and if they were iterated on and enhanced. No two levels were too similar, and while the worlds themselves were themed, the levels didn't fit into the theme of the world. Each level was just what it was. It stood on its own 2 feet. Super Mario 3D World was challenging, engaging, creative, and fun. It took the staleness of the new Super Mario Bros. Franchise and injected it with cocaine and hallucinogenic drugs. The disappointment we were preparing for, thankfully, was unfounded. The game was fun. It had the Mario magic, and people loved it. Its praise was worthwhile, but it didn't push sales like Nintendo had probably hoped it would. Even though it's a really great game, Super Mario 3D World is also kind of overrated. Okay. Just hear me out. I just got done singing its creative praises, I know. And 3D World deserves it. It greatly deserves it. I mean, it's just filled with charm and personality. Its mechanics and ideas are well executed. It is pure, unadulterated fun. But there are a few reasons why I find the game to be overrated. 1, I don't think it was a game the Mario fanbase was looking for. There's a lot of love for Super Mario 64. Its playground-type levels brought a lot of fun and enjoyment. Even if you didn't find the star you were looking for, it was just fun to play around in. As the franchise progressed, the 3D games got more and more linear, and then were even abandoned for the new Super Mario franchise. 3D Land for the 3DS brought some of that 3D Mario magic back, but it was just a glorified new Super Mario Bros. Type game. So when 3D World was announced, we were still left wanting. Where was the next awesome 3D exploratory-based Mario game? While 3D World ended up being magnificent, it wasn't what we truly wanted. No matter what, there's always going to be a wee bit of disappointment. 2. I hate how this game controls. Some aspects appear to have been fixed in the Switch release, but the original Wii U version just felt off. Mario felt slow. His pacing just didn't seem right. He didn't have the momentum we'd come to expect from Mario, in 3D or 2D. His jumping had a floatier feeling to them that was just harder to judge and control. He didn't snap. He didn't have that crunch. Part of that could have been from the fact that for the first time since Super Mario Bros. 2 on the NES, Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Toad were all playable characters, and they had their Super Mario Bros. 2 movement attributes applied. Mario was an all-arounder, Luigi could jump high but had slippery physics, Peach could float but was slower, and Toad was fast but didn't have a high jump. The problem is, they all felt sluggish. Speed was low, acceleration took too long, and when interrupted by platforming or by getting hit by an enemy, you couldn't get back up to your preferred pace quick enough. For a Mario game, it feels extremely sluggish. It doesn't have that Dorito-type crunch to the game feel. For the first time, I gotta say, Mario doesn't feel really good to play. It doesn't feel bad, but it sure doesn't have that same care that just about every other Mario game had to his weight and feel of how he moves. He just felt like a slug. 3. The game's camera perspective can lead to some truly infuriating moments. depth perception can sometimes be impossible. Super Mario 3D Land was designed around the fact that the 3DS had a glasses-free stereoscopic screen, meaning you weren't looking at a 2D image, but a 3D display giving you depth perception. The fixed camera angles worked fine for this. 3D World took the same design philosophy and didn't change much. So now you're trying to decipher where Mario is in 3D space on a 2D plane with a design that was originally intended to be played on a display that could give you a true 3D perspective. In short, this doesn't translate well at times. I'd found myself losing my perception of where Mario was on screen, dying over and over again at certain points because my brain couldn't decipher what was going on or where Mario was going to land, or even where he was at times. The lack of proper perspective got in the way. It's one thing to fail in a game when it's your fault and you're in control, but when you fail because of poor design, agency is stripped from you. You're left crying out, "It's not my fault!" It's not fun, and it's not fair. By this point, designers at Nintendo had been making 3D Mario games for 20 years. Perspective issues and problems have been figured out. The fact that there are multiple instances throughout this game where this issue is a factor, it's rather disappointing. Super Mario 3D World is a lot of fun. I got a lot of enjoyment from the game. It's got charm and character coming out the wazoo. It's got fun, engaging mechanics that never overstay their welcome. It's a wonderfully designed game. It just has some other issues that take away from that charm. In my opinion, it's one of the weaker entries in the franchise. Thankfully not as weak as Sunshine. Yeesh. With that said, a weak Mario game is still a really good game. Like how a weak Pixar movie is a really good movie. That's how high the bar is set. But with that in mind, Super Mario 3D World, it's still overrated.
Oh, go kill yourself!
Hey, that's uncalled for, man.